So let's get right into it. I have a list of mistakes that I've made in the past and some tips and tricks that I wish somebody told me about, and some water and some props. And I just want to sit here and talk to you guys and hopefully help you guys out with your gardening season. Okay, so let's really quickly just touch on pots or containers. This does not have to be even an expense at all to you. You can use things around the house like old party cups, a clamshell like this. Just make sure it has drainage, so poke holes in the party cups. They do make like paper pots, which you can kind of mimic with an old egg carton. And that's just breathable in itself. You don't need to poke holes in that. It does dry out a lot quicker, so make sure you're really watching it if you do plant and that kind of stuff. But that's about it. I do use pots just because, I don't know, I like the uniformity of it. I like to start with these 6-packs, and then I'll usually just grow 6 of the same thing. I think they're like 2x1 or something. I got these really, really cheap though. I think I got like 1,000 for $20 or something on Amazon, I believe. So that's cool. I like those. And then I will just up pot to these 4-inch containers, and then from there I'll take it out to the garden. But really can cost you $0, and it's really not a big deal. Let's talk about growing medium. So what are you going to put into your pots to put your seeds in to grow your plants? Contrary to what I used to believe, this is very important, by the way, you do not want any nutrients. So don't go out and buy a raised bed mix and try to start your seedlings in there. They sell, you can buy like a potting mix or a seed starting mix, but I would recommend just making your own. It's way cheaper and it's super, super easy. You can either get, what I use is a coconut coir or peat moss. Some people don't like peat moss because they say it's unsustainable, but I don't really know if that's true. And then perlite or vermiculite, which is just, it's derived from lava. I'm not sure. I think perlite is like basically lava popcorn. But anyways, that's for drainage, and that is very, very, very important. I'll show you what my mix looks like. Right here I have peat moss and perlite. So the white stuff is perlite. I could have put more, honestly, but this is like good enough. Maybe that's like 1 to 4 perlite or something like that, but you could literally do more perlite than peat moss. You do want to soak your peat moss or your coconut coir until because naturally it's hydrophobic, which means it repels water. But once you soak it, then it will absorb the water and hold the water well. Another thing I wanted to touch on is that I know Miracle-Gro sells perlite, which is totally cool if you want to grab that. And I don't want to get in trouble for saying this, but if you're gardening organically, that stuff does have Miracle-Gro in it, which is not organic, so you might not want that. I've also only seen it in like pretty small bags, and you can get a way bigger bag for a lot better price. Okay, so what is next after you have everything ready? Maybe the most important part, planting your seeds. I just wanted to touch on one thing. It's really not a big deal, especially with transplants. I mean, it kind of is. Don't bury the seed. Like, some seeds are so teeny, like brassicas are teeny, for example, which is like broccoli, kale, cabbage, stuff like that, that you just barely need to push that into the soil. Some seeds can even grow just like on top of the soil. A lot of things will reseed themselves, which means the seeds will just drop and they'll grow. Some seeds are so amazing they'll make you jealous that you can't grow other things. but just about 1 to 4 times as deep as the seed is big, if that makes sense, is just gonna be perfect. If you didn't plant it deep, like corn, for example, you should plant it kind of deep so it can establish roots deep into the soil. You can fix that if you're transplanting corn. Tomatoes, like, that's really common for people to transplant and plant like a bunch of the stem in there, because those little hairs on the tomato stem will grow roots and help anchor your plant and make a stronger plant. So like I said, it's really not a huge deal, but don't bury your tiny seeds, I guess is just all I'm saying. And after planting your seeds, then you need to water them, obviously. But one of the most common mistakes, and one that I have made many a times, is watering too much. This can be very confusing for someone that's new to gardening, but plants like to be moist. They don't like to be soggy. If your soil is moist, like meaning you can grab it and squeeze it and get a drop out of it, it's fine. That plant has enough water. It's totally cool. A way to kind of monitor your watering and make sure you're watering a good amount is to use like a tray, like a saucer. They do make like square ones that fit well with the square pots. And water from the bottom. So just pour water down in here and your plants will literally wick it up. They'll wick up as much water as they need, so you're not going to overwater that way. A lot of people will underwater too, because they'll be like spraying the top of their plants and they'll be like, oh, the top's wet, but they can't see the bottom of the soil, so it's hard to judge how wet your plants are if you're watering from the top. So I would definitely recommend bottom watering. If you don't have any saucers, just water carefully, like carefully and slowly, so you don't wash out your plants either, your tiny little fragile seedlings, and that'll be good. Another really quick tip that I wanted to touch on, unless you live somewhere with a really short growing season and you want to get a head start, totally understand. If you can help it, do not start squash, cucumbers, melons, gourds, things like that in pots and then transplant them, because they really don't like it at all. And that's just a few that I can think of. I'm sure there's other plants out there that don't like it, but most plants are okay. But those plants, if you could start them from seed, they'll just do way better. They're just very fragile. Another thing I want to touch on is don't start your seedlings too early. Like, I know it's exciting to get plants started, and the purpose of starting transplants is to get a head start, but you need to be up potting these things so they don't get too root bound, and you don't want a bunch of like 1 gallon pots with vegetables in your house or in your greenhouse or whatever. So maybe start, I don't know, like most things like a month before your last frost date, or even like a couple weeks. Like, there's really no rules to it, but don't go starting things in the middle of winter when you have months and months left of cold weather, because you're gonna need to up-pot these vegetables to at least like 1 gallon containers. So just breathe and plan your garden. That will help you with your excitement. Another thing you can do if you do want to get a jump start, like for those folks with a really short growing season, you can use a heat mat, which is, I don't have one because we live in Florida and we really don't need that. It's just like a mat that is hot. But that'll help you, like if you want to start like some peppers or something, those would rather be like 75, 80, they're happy and they'll sprout quicker. Also, if you just want to sprout things quicker, heat helps. Humidity also helps. So you can use like plastic wrap, or I mean, they make like trays with humidity domes, but you don't have to spend money on that. You could use plastic wrap or a old grocery plastic bag or whatever, but that's definitely not necessary. It just helps you get the seeds to sprout a little bit quicker. I don't use them here in Florida. We used to live in the desert in Las Vegas, and we still didn't use that kind of stuff, so it's really not necessary. Okay, 2 tips that totally contradict themselves, but I will explain. Don't grow too much and don't grow not enough. Okay, so know how much space you have and about how big your plants are gonna get and how far apart they need to be. I know it can be really exciting and you wanna literally plant everything, but you don't wanna get overwhelmed and you don't wanna have too many plants that you just can't fit. So don't grow too much, but also if you want to grow a plant and you really want to have that plant, I'd say plant at least 3, okay? To make sure you have one. So I think they say 1 for the gardener, 1 for the pests, and 1 for the weather. That's what they say. So just overplant a little bit, but not too much, I guess. Just really think about your space. So the next thing is, do not forget flowers and herbs, especially if you're wanting to grow organically. I started gardening because I really like fresh food. I like to eat food, and fresh food out of the garden is just really something else. And especially if you're growing organically, you really need those flowers and herbs to attract the good pests and deter the bad ones. Also, variety helps with that. Like, if you want like 5 tomatoes and 5 peppers, plant them like intermixed, and put some flowers under it and an herb in one bed, and then have another bed that's like the same thing. Tomatoes, peppers, herb, flower type of thing. Like, you don't need to have a tomato bed and a pepper bed and a okra bed. It looks way more beautiful when you mix it up a little bit, and it confuses the bad pests and it makes the good bugs and the bees, it makes them happy to have different stuff in different colors. And if you have flowers, your garden will be more beautiful and you'll want to spend more time working in it, because gardening can be hard work. There's also edible flowers, so like nasturtiums, marigolds, I think pansies are edible, hibiscus is all edible. There's so many edible flowers that you could grow if you do want a fully edible garden that pollinators still like. Borage is edible, and that's one of the bees' like favorite flowers ever. You want bees in your garden, you want ladybugs, you want all these things in your garden if you're growing organically. And if you're not, you still want that stuff. The next thing little seedlings need is light. You can grow your seeds in a window, but a lot of times that just doesn't cut it. If you see your seedlings getting taller than you think they should be, or going towards the light, that means they need more light. Maybe if it's the sunniest window in your whole house, that'll cut it for sure. You could also just get like cheap LEDs, cheap fluorescents, that's totally fine. Don't look straight into them, it's not good for your eyes whatsoever. You could also grow your transplants outside, or you could grow them in a greenhouse, but you do need some sort of light, supplemental light if you're indoors and you don't have a super sunny window. Okay, I saved probably the most important thing for last. And I avoided this for a long time and I lost a lot of transplants. If you are not growing your transplants outside already, you need to harden them off, which means slowly introducing them to the outdoor elements over a period of like, I do 10 days, maybe a week will be okay. But maybe you grew your plants like in a sunny window and you're like, oh, they saw the sun every day. They're still not used to being outside in the wind and the really strong UV rays, because not all of the sun comes through a window. So you just need to slowly get your plants used to being outside. Okay, so how I harden my seedlings off, I usually do it over a 10-day period. It definitely is a pain in the butt, but it really helps your success. So maybe you could get away with like a week or a few days, but my schedule is I will take the seeds outside for an hour, like right in the morning or right before sunset when the sun's not so strong. And if they start to look sad and stressed, I will take them in and then start the hour, try to do it tomorrow, the next day. The second day I'll do 2 hours, third day I'll do 3, fourth day I'll do 4, and I'll just work my way up to 10 hours, and then the last night I'll let them stay out overnight. And you'll notice your leaves getting like a lot thicker. When you buy plants at big box stores, they're already hardened off. So that's why you can go out and plant those straight into the garden, and they usually work pretty well. Except those are always like really root bound, which is just not a good situation. But yeah, harden them off, take them outside, get them used to it, and then you can plant them in the garden. And I really hope that these tips and tricks and advice will help you have a better gardening season. Like I said, I wish someone would have told me these things a few years ago. Please let me know if you want to see any more videos and want any more advice. Let me know if you have any questions. And thank you so much.